This was me during the movie being like, we have to talk about The Secrets of Dumbledore. I am Carl, the Storylosopher, a writer and director helping you think deeply about story. I'm a huge Harry Potter fan, and I mean no disrespect to the writers and the filmmakers, you know, J.K. Rowling and Steve Kloves, like they've done some amazing work, but... So come with me as we analyze Secrets of Dumbledore from a screenwriting perspective to figure out what you can do to make your screenplay better, all right? And of course, spoilers ahead. You've been warned. I really wanted to like this film, especially after how confusing and convoluted Crimes of Grindelwald was. For this particular film, for The Secrets of Dumbledore, my complaints from a storytelling perspective fall into 3 categories, okay? Context, stakes, and payoff. But before we get into the issues that I have with Secrets of Dumbledore, let's talk about the stuff that I like, the stuff that it did well, okay? Secrets of Dumbledore definitely had some cool visual language. You know, I could tell they're really making an effort where they have the wedding cake topper in Jacob's Bakery. It's like, clearly that's symbolic of him and what's going on with Queenie from the previous film. That's really cool. In fact, almost everything that happened in the film with Jacob was like one of the highlights. It's like, oh cool, Jacob's doing something, you know. This will be a great scene. Another thing that the movie does well is, of course, they've got some new Fantastic Beasts in here. It's a Fantastic Beasts movie, so there have to be some Fantastic Beasts. And they at least made an effort to make the Beast an integral part of the plot. Although how well they did that, we'll get to in a second. I thought that the magical fight scenes were pretty cool, especially in Act 2. Like, I really liked the moment where Lally and Jacob are trying to fight people off, and Lally makes this big, almost like staircase of book pages, and Jacob has to run up the book pages, and it's all in slow motion. Like, that was really cool. That's some really cool visuals. You've got the tension between Queenie and Jacob in ballroom. Queenie comes in with Grindelwald, but she won't look at Jacob, and they kind of build that up through the whole scene, and then Jacob goes over and tries to confront Grindelwald. Like, those are really interesting moments from a character perspective that we expect to happen in this movie, and I thought they were fun. I think they could have gone further with them. Some of the other things that I really liked were, you know, we're learning more about Aberforth, and we get to learn more about the Dumbledore family and what happened with Ariana, Dumbledore's sister, so that's really cool. And of course, the German prison break scene with Newt and Theseus and the little scorpion crabs in the swivel, you're not swiveling, I'm swiveling like you're swiveling, you know? Like, that was really fun. But there are so many problems with this movie. So let's talk about the first thing, lack of context. This is also related to one of the other things I'm going to talk about later, which is payoff. So you can also refer to this kind of as setup and payoff. But I think there's more that goes along with this than just setting something up. It's also the context that you lay for the story that's going to take place. For example, we first get introduced to the Quillen, the little deer critter. I'm going to call it a Chillin. If I'm pronouncing it wrong, let me know in the comments. I probably am. But we don't understand in the beginning of the film why it's important. We see that Newt is trying to, you know, he wants to be there for this birth of this potentially rare creature, and then people come after it, but we don't know why. And you could say, oh, well, we find out later why. Yeah, we do, but we don't care as much at the beginning because we don't know why the Quillen, cutie thingy is important to begin with. So if we'd have set up the context of this is a creature that is almost extinct, that is imperative for the magical world's political system, and they'd be like, oh, that's why it's important, that's why he's trying to save it, and that's why the bad guys are after it, right? But we don't get that. And so at the very beginning, it just seemed like a kind of placeholder creature, where it's like, oh, this is another creature that Newt is trying to take care of and protect from bad guys, like we've seen in so many other scenes in this series. Newt protects Animal. Newt good. Well, yeah. Because it's supposed to be more than that in this story, we don't get that context from it. And I think it suffers because of that. We're not given enough information as to what the Chillin can do. The Chillin ends up playing a much larger role later on in Act 3. So we find out that, oh, it can see into your soul. It's like, Okay, so it's empathetic. And apparently they said that it can see the future. I don't remember them ever saying that, but when I looked up the film, it said that, it can see the future. No, I thought that was what Grindelwald was doing. And so that's another thing that is not explained very well. We see Grindelwald kill the Chillin, and he then sees the future in the blood, and we're like, oh, so that's how it works. That's why he needs this creature, because he can see the future if he uses the blood. But then later on, he just sees the future in any other type of reflection. And it's like, oh, is this just his ability now that he has? Did he get this from the animal? Did the animal transfer this to him because he killed it? Don't know. Because we don't know, we are confused, and it's hard to understand what's going on. When you're doing something like this that's fantasy, you have to understand the rules of the magic. And now let me give you an example of a potential storytelling, screenwriting solution that we could give to this killin' problem. All right. In the story, we find out that Grindelwald kills the Chillin so that he can pretend to bring it back to life, so it will obey him or accept him or bow to him or whatever. We don't understand that. Because we see him kill it and then see the future, we think there's a causal connection there. When in reality, imagine this type of scene instead. Credence brings him the creature, and the creature, because of its abilities, is very afraid of him and doesn't want to be near him and is very freaked out. And then we see him kill it. Like, oh, Grindelwald's a really bad dude, right? And then after he kills it, he brings it into the water and uses his weird spell to try to reanimate it. And then, what does it do? Then the Chillin changes attitudes. Now the Chillin likes him and acts like his pet. That would have established what the Chillin can do, why he wanted to kill it, and potentially set up, okay, why did he do that? Why is this important? Why did he bring it back to life? And then that would set up what happens later on in Act 3. And that's the kind of context that you gotta have, all right? There's some other issues with context right from the very beginning of the film. From a character perspective, think about this kind of ragtag team that we have put together, right? Some of them we know, some of them we don't know. We know, a little bit from the previous film, but he's made to be this very mysterious guy, and we don't figure out what his motivation is or what he wants in this film. We know that he wants to help Dumbledore, but we don't know why. Another character, Lally. She's this cool professor from Ilvermorny. It's like, okay, cool professor. She has these cool abilities. But why not include Tina in this role in the film? Like, everything that she does, Tina could have done, and it would have made much more sense compared to the two previous films, right? We expected Tina. And so when I was watching, I was thinking, oh, well, maybe they couldn't get the actress for Tina, and they had to write her out of it, or maybe she couldn't appear in the film. And then, no, they still have Tina in a tiny little scene at the end. She's still in the story. They just wanted to make a new character who has no connection to the other films and no connection to the characters, and is just kind of... There's just no Tina. It's explained away in a very hand-wavy way, like, oh, she's popular and in charge of a department now. Okay, but what's the real reason? There needs to be some type of character-based reason, okay? Another thing that's not explained very well, character-wise, and this is a minor character, but still, Vogel. He is the current Chief Mugwump of the Confederation of Wizards, right? He's the current guy in charge who's overseeing this election, right? At first, he seems like he could have been an interesting kind of character. He's like caught between, two hard places. He's like, oh, I want to do the right thing as the current leader, but also I have to be pragmatic and know that people really like Grindelwald, even though he's a bad dude. That could have been really interesting, but then they just kind of moved him over into, oh, he's on Grindelwald's side and he's hanging out with Grindelwald and we don't know why. What? That could have been an interesting thing if we had the context, but we're not given that context, right? And the same thing with the entire election. That is a main problem with this. We don't know what this person's powers are, what their influence is within the magical world, and what their influence is outside of the magical world, and especially why Grindelwald wants to take this position. Because we saw in the previous film, Grindelwald, amassing all these followers and trying to get the magical world to turn against the Muggle world, And then in this film, he's like, no, I'm gonna like take over this election. What? Once again, there's not enough context. There's not enough explanation given. And it's okay if you have some of those explanations given later on down the road, but we have to have enough to grab onto and to know why it's important. And I think this is especially important since, based on my understanding of the Deathly Hallows, everything with Grindelwald is supposed to align with World War II and Nazi Germany. While the Muggles are during World War II, then the Wizards are having this battle between Dumbledore and Grindelwald. And it just never really picked up. There was a little bit of some fascist iconography, there's a little bit of hints of that, but I definitely got more of a sense of that in the previous film. And so I was expecting there to be more in this film, and there just wasn't. The second biggest issue that I have with Secrets of Dumbledore from a storytelling perspective is the lack of stakes. Okay, we already know that Grindelwald is bad. We already know that he wants to turn things against, the Muggles. We kind of know that from the previous film, but we don't really know much beyond that. It's set up at the beginning of this film that Grindelwald, because of the events of the previous film, is wanted. It's like there's all these wanted posters everywhere. But Grindelwald's just chilling in his castle on the side of the mountain. Nobody's after him. Nobody's taking down his thugs. He ain't like on the run or anything. He doesn't really seem to be in that much danger. So I don't know what the stakes are for Grindelwald either. And then after he's acquitted, magically, pun intended, then he's like, okay, now I want to be part of this election. Why? It's a little bit like all of the, complicated machinations of the political system of, like Clone Wars or something. But without the detail that we need to know to be able to follow it. And I would say that's an issue, especially for Grindelwald, because he is supposed to be the main antagonist. But he doesn't really do many things that are antagonistic. He doesn't even kill anybody in this movie. In the last movie, he was like killing little kids and stuff, and like tempting all these people and trying to wreak all this havoc. And in this one, he's just like, hey, you, go do that for me. Hey, go get that animal for me. Hey, I'm gonna give a speech and sound kind of creepy. And it's like, what? What? Is he now less of a bad guy than last time? So I just don't understand what's going on with Grindelwald. And then the same thing kind of applies to Dumbledore. In addition to the kind of structural confusion of us not knowing if Newt is supposed to be the main character again, or if Dumbledore is supposed to be the main character, because we're not really sure. I also don't know what Dumbledore's actual motivations are. Of course, we know in a broad sense that he wants to stop Grindelwald, but because we don't know what Grindelwald is doing, it's also hard to know how Dumbledore is supposed to stop him. Eventually, this evolved into a kind of like Dumbledore is going to try to confuse Grindelwald because Grindelwald is trying to see the future, so we're going to give him a bunch of different things that he can't predict, so it'll be harder for him to see the future. Okay, but why? Based on the way it was set up at the end of the last film and the very beginning of this film, it made it seem like Dumbledore's mission is going to be to find a way to break the curse so he can go after Grindelwald. It's kind of like, I need to go after Grindelwald, but I can't. So what do I got to do? I got to figure out a way to break the curse. And that should be Dumbledore's motivation, right? That's what's at stake. There's just hijinks. Magical hijinks. Does Dumbledore want to stop Grindelwald from killing Muggles? Well, in an abstract way, yeah, but we don't see Grindelwald killing Muggles, so we don't know what the deal is with that. We kind of know that Grindelwald is trying to take political power. We're not sure why. And so Dumbledore's trying to prevent that, so there's hijinks, I guess, but isn't the whole thing about them fighting each other the main focus? That's what was set up at the end of the last film, and that's what's set up in the opening scene of this film, with Dumbledore and Grindelwald eyeing each other down in this little cafe. The filmmakers are telling us it's about to go down, there's going to be a show-off between these two people. But we know that can't happen without the curse being broken. So it seems like what should happen is Dumbledore should be going after the curse, trying to figure out how to do that. And Grindelwald should be either trying to stop Dumbledore from doing that or sending his henchmen to do that. And then there would be some kind of fantastical creature or some kind of assistance from Newt that Dumbledore would need in order to break this curse. That's what you would expect from this. But no, that's not what we get. And because we don't know why people are doing what they're doing and we don't know what's at stake for them, it's harder for us to track. And it kind of means that the momentum of the film kind of goes down as it goes on. The last thing I want to talk about with Secrets of Dumbledore is the lack of payoff. Of course, you can't blame an audience for the expectations that they have coming into the film. You know, that's determined a lot by marketing and by the last film, and you can't always plan for that. So maybe it's my fault that I came in expecting this to be the last of a trilogy, when in fact, I had to look it up afterward. There's supposed to be 5 Fantastic Beasts films, not 3. So that's probably on me. But especially based on the way they set it up in the last film, I thought that there would be a big showdown in their wedding. And that is symptomatic of a larger issue with this film, which is that there's not payoff for these things that are set up early on, or if there is payoff, it wasn't set up well enough. Now here's what I mean. For example, at the very end of the film, you've got all these people in Bhutan, the top of this mountain, on the steps, and then it's almost like it's the end of a play. And Grindelwald is there, and then there's this crowd of people, you know, a couple steps below him, and they're all just like watching. And they're taking turns talking to each other about what they're doing and what they want, and what they think. Like Dumbledore is there, Aberforth is there, all these people are there, and Grindelwald is not just like killing everybody. He's just watching. And then when they bring out the new Chillin, which is supposed to be the big deal, they were trying to capture it. And it gets there and they finally bring it out. Grindelwald just watches. They're like, oh, this thing that could unravel all of my plans is now here and it's going to bow to somebody else. I'm that's fine. I'll just watch. Yeah. What? How is this the big finale of this movie? It don't make no sense, as we say down here in North Kakalaki. Don't know exactly what he's trying to achieve because there's not the context or the stakes, so then the payoff is also confusing. You see how these all kind of add up together to form this story structure, this plot kind of creature, this fantastic beast that's composed of all these parts. You got to have all the parts or the story falls apart. So let's talk about some more ways that there's just not enough of a payoff. This goes back to what I was saying earlier about being a lack of context with the character of Kama. So he shows up at Grindelwald's door and says, Dumbledore sent me here to spy on you, but I'm going to help you. And he pretends to be a double agent. And we wonder, is he a double agent or is he a triple agent? You know, what's going on here? So that's an interesting bit of suspense. There's some tension there. And there's a really, really cool scene where, you know, there's the reference back to the previous film where he, you know, oh, I killed your sister. Well, let me just take that memory away from you. And he like pulls the memory out and he starts crying. And it's like, oh, that is an amazing scene, an amazing concept. Yes, I want more of that. Like, that was great. That was like the best part of that whole subplot. Everything before we didn't understand, and everything after we also don't understand because the lack of context and the lack of payoff. We don't know how Kama is able to get in there without Queenie reading his mind and detecting that he is actually a triple agent. Maybe Queenie lied. Maybe he's really good at occlumency, being able to shield his mind or whatever. But we don't find out any of that. If there was a scene between Kama and Queenie where he's like, why did you lie to him? And then Queenie's like, I just don't know if I should be here anymore. Then that's development. That's character development. And that gives us more context and it adds more mystery. And then we see Kama trying to like, you know, infiltrate, trying to ride that line between doing enough to help Grindelwald and not doing enough to where he portrays his values. And no, we don't get any of that. And then at the end, here's where it comes back to payoff. He just all of a sudden switches sides again and is a good guy. You know, he shows up, you know, behind somebody and ha, see, I was a good guy all along. We had no proof of that. We didn't know if that was supposed to be an expectation or if that was supposed to be an expectation to be subverted. We didn't have either one. Wait, what? It just comes out of the blue. Another thing, which could have been a really, really good part of this movie, which they started to do well early on in the beginning of the second act, but then the bottom just fell out of it, was everything with Queenie. Remember, this was a huge deal in the previous film. Queenie and Jacob wanted to be together. They couldn't be together. So then she decides to go along with Grindelwald. Then in this film, it seems like she's doubting her position. You know, there's some tension there. But then she just shows up with Grindelwald throughout the rest of the film, just goes along with him, is just very passive. And then when Jacob finally is able to corner her in Bhutan, she's just like, oh, okay, I don't want to be bad anymore, you know. There's some mistakes you just can't come back from. And he's like, no, I still accept you. And then it's like nothing ever happened. I mean, cue the line, right? That was easy. Barely an inconvenience. Where's the struggle? Where's the payoff? Where's the tension of this being a big deal? We had some of it, and then the solution to it provided almost no catharsis. And then on top of that, what happens at the very end of the movie? Jacob and Queenie get married. In New York. Even though in the last film they said, oh, we can't get married here because it's against the wizard laws. We need to go to the UK to get married. But none of that matters because they just get married anyway. This was me during the movie being like, it don't make sense. Another thing that we thought would be a big deal, which ended up kind of fizzling out, was the fate of Credence. There was some interesting, developments where Credence has to go kill Dumbledore, even though he's found out that he is a Dumbledore, and then we learned that he's Aberforth's son, so he's Albus's nephew, and it's like, okay, that's interesting, that's cool, where are we going to go with this? But then it's almost like the film completely forgets about Credence once we get to Act 3, because he's dying. It's like, okay, he's dying, so what is he going to do? Oh, he shows up at the very end and tells people that Grindelwald is lying, and then he falls over. Oh, and then we've got to have Aberforth go and talk to him. Dumbledore's like, no, wait. And then when we see them again, they've already started talking. So we barely get to see that moment. What? Did you ever think about me? Always. Did you know he existed? Why did you never come after him? What is your relationship now? So once again, we've spent the last 2 films focusing so much on who Credence is and his journey, right? But then there's no payoff for that. What about the mirrors? They can talk to each other through the mirrors. Okay, that's cool because that connects to the Harry Potter world and Aberforth giving Harry the mirror. But how are father and son connected through the mirrors? Do they know that who is on the other side of the mirror? Do they realize what their relationship is? We don't know because there's no payoff. And of course, the biggest thing with this is I expected, maybe incorrectly, but I expected this to be the showdown between Dumbledore and Grindelwald. And they did have a little bit of that, but it has no oomph because they go into the mirror universe, kind of like Doctor Strange does, so that nobody else is actually hurt. It only happens when the curse has just been broken mysteriously, even though there's no reason why the curse could have been broken, and it's only been just a plot device, throughout this thing. You have this blood oath that is mysteriously broken by chance, and then they immediately start to fight. Okay, are we finally gonna do it? No. Real issues with a lack of payoff. Or things that are set up and then not paid off. Or things that are set up and paid off but not enough. The title of the film is Dumbledore's Secrets. What secrets? He comes right out and says in the beginning, oh, I made a blood oath with Grindelwald because I was in love with him. And he's fairly honest with most people throughout the film and encouraging and not manipulative. He doesn't really seem to have that many secrets either. I thought this was about his secrets. That's what you've set up, and you didn't pay it off. Those are all the problems that I had as a screenwriter and storyteller, director with Secrets of Dumbledore. Screenwriters, storytellers, when you're working on your screenplay, what do you need to make sure you include? Context, stakes, and payoffs, right? Now we talk about context. That means to make sure that I know everything I need to so that I'm along for the ride. You want to invite mystery and suspense and tension, but not confusion. And then with the stakes, you need to get me invested. You need to make sure that I care, but also show me why the characters care. Okay? What's in it for them? What happens if they don't get what they want? Things like that. You need to show what's at stake. And finally, with the payoffs, you've got to make sure that each thing that's set up has a proper payoff, and everything that's paid off has setup, and that if it is paid off, that it's paid off to the way that we expect it to be based on everything else that's already happened. Mash that like button if you found this video to be enlightening, so that other screenwriters and storytellers can see it. And let me know down in the comments what you thought of the film, or if there's any details I missed. Once again, this is not to knock any of the filmmakers or the talent, all the talented people that came together to make the movie. My wife and I still had fun watching it. There were still some fun moments, but it had so much potential, and I feel like it didn't pay off on the potential that it had. Especially after the low bar that was set with Crimes of Grindelwald. We don't know all the stuff that went on, during the writing process and all the meddling that could or could not have taken place by the studio, by executives, by all these other interested parties. But if you are a screenwriter and you want to prepare yourself for this type of thing and learn how Hollywood actually works, then please go click up here and watch my masterclass called How to Launch Your Screenwriting Career Without Having to Move to LA. Knox.